Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Saturday, September the 7th. And welcome to our commentary. Beautiful Saturday afternoon here in the Dallas area. Beautiful afternoon if you're an Aggie fan. The Texas A&M Aggies are having quite a day against McNeese State. I don't think that's a very big school, but nevertheless, we'll take a victory any way it comes. The Longhorns are playing Michigan, and that game, I don't know what's going on in that game, but that ought to be a pretty tough game for the Longhorns. After all, Michigan is the national champ, although Texas is rated pretty high as well, so it should be a very competitive game. Well, I want to talk a little bit about these polls because I'm sure you get confused, as many people do, as to who's up and who's down. Here's how I look at it. If you look at the head-to-head polls, the traditional pollsters, it's a tie right now. It's a tie. They're within the margin of error, 1.8, 1.5, 1.2 points. That's within the margin of error for the head-to-head polls. But when you look at some of the polls that go a bit beyond the numbers, like Nate Silver and Polymetrics, I think that's her name. Polymetrics, I think it's actually a betting institution, not actually a pollster, but they take bets on who's going to win. And Nate Silver is one of these mathematical geniuses who gets into all the polls and sort of gives you a compilation of all of them. If you look at Nate Silver, he's putting Trump ahead fairly easily, actually. He's putting Trump ahead easily. And if you look at the other one, Polymetrics, again, the betting agency, they're putting Trump, I think Trump is in the mid-50s to be reelected or to be returned to the White House. So, your guess is as good as mine at this point. I don't think I can say that one guy is ahead and one person's ahead and the other person is behind. I do have a gut feeling that Trump is going to win, and I have a gut feeling that this debate coming up on Tuesday is going to be a turning point for both of these candidates. Now, when you look at what President Trump has to do on Tuesday, he's got to lower the volume. He basically has to talk about his accomplishments, and there were many, as president, and then make a comparison to the Biden administration, Biden-Harris administration. He has to tie Kamala Harris to Joe Biden. Now, she's going to run away from Joe Biden, but he has to tie Kamala Harris to Joe Biden. And so the issues are clearly on President Trump's side. If he focuses on the issues and compares his presidency to the actual presidency, I think he's got a pretty good shot of winning the debate. On the other hand, Kamala Harris, I'm sure, wants to make it all about Trump. And her challenge is that she has to come across as presidential. She has to come across as someone who can be commander in chief at a time when there are some very serious challenges to the United States, not just in Ukraine. That's one of the easiest ones. But Iran and Taiwan and of course, the whole immigration issue, which has exploded here in the last couple of weeks with all these apartment stories of gangs taking over apartments and all of that. That is the kind of story that puts immigration on the front page of just about every city, because these things are happening in more than one city. So that's her challenge. She has to prove that she can handle the presidency, that she can be a commander in chief, and that she can answer some of the questions that she's going to get. Now, I don't expect ABC to follow up a great deal on the questions. I'm not that impressed, frankly, with the ABC operation. I think it would have been a lot better if they had done a group of different reporters from different organizations. I think that would have been better. You would have had better quality of questions, but that is what we have. And ABC is going to be running this. I think I'm not familiar, frankly, with the two people who are running or going to be asking the questions. One of them, I believe, is the one who does the newscast in the evening, the ABC World News or whatever, at 5:30 or 6:30. That's who I think one of them is going to be. And then there's another lady I'm not familiar with at all. But they're going to have to come up with some follow-up questions to both of them, not just Kamala Harris. But again, when we're talking about issues, I think Trump has the advantage. I also think Trump is more familiar with the issues. He can talk about them on his feet I don't think she can do that as well. So we will see. We will see. I don't want to underestimate Kamala Harris. That would be a serious mistake. And I don't want to overestimate President Trump. That would be a serious mistake too. So we'll have to see what happens. But I do think they have different objectives. Trump has to lower the volume and talk about the issues. And Vice President Harris has to somehow impress the American people that she's ready for this moment of becoming commander-in-chief of the United States at a time when there are some very serious challenges around the world. We'll see. We'll see what happens, but it should be an interesting debate on Tuesday. I think the debate could very well move this campaign in one direction or another. I think, for example, if President Trump does very well, I think you'll start seeing the numbers go up for him somewhat. If he doesn't do well, and we see let's say the Trump of the first debate with Biden back in 2020, who was screaming and just obnoxious, honestly, in retrospect. If we see that Trump, then that's probably the beginning of some kind of a Harris campaign. But we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. We'll look at it on Wednesday after we have the debate on Tuesday night. I've got a post coming out on Sunday talking about surprises that happen on presidential campaigns. If you go back to over the years, there have been some surprises, things that just come out of the blue after Labor Day. And we had one 52 years ago today, and that was the incident at the Munich Olympics. Back in 1972, the Olympics were in Munich, and there was a terrorist attack against the Israeli athletes that pretty much shut down the Olympics for several days. I still think they had a closing ceremony, but it was never the same, of course, after some of those Israeli athletes were killed and injured, and it turned the whole thing into a very bloody Olympics. But it clearly, brought to the forefront the importance of having a president who's familiar with national security, and that ended up helping considerably President Richard Nixon back in 1972, who was seen by most Americans as someone who understood foreign policy and who really knew how to or understood the world a lot better than his opponent, George McGovern. Now, I think Nixon would have probably won the election without the Munich Olympics. I don't think he needed that to win the election. But once again, we get that, that surprise that can come in out of the blue, completely out of the blue. Who would have predicted that there would be a terrorist attack in the Olympics in 1972? Nobody predicted that. But yet that's what happens in campaign. Now, I bring this up because you just never know. We're basically 2 months away, 60 days away from the election. And who knows what is going to happen in the next couple of months that could have an impact on this election. I have no idea. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a surprise because it's been that kind of a year, but I have no idea where it would come from. But you'd always, as a candidate and as a country, you always have to think about the fact that you could have a surprise, something completely out of the blue, like the terrorist attack on the Munich Olympics back in 1972. We had something like that also in 2004. 2004, of course, terrorism was the #1 issue in the country. And I think it was sometime in the month of September, there was a terrorist attack against a school in Russia where a bunch of kids were killed. And that once again brought the issue of terrorism to the front pages. So you never know. You never know what's going to happen in these last 60 days. All I can tell you is that there's probably going to be a surprise. Hopefully not a surprise like, a terrorist attack that ends up killing a bunch of innocent people. That nobody wants that, of course. But those are the things that can happen in a presidential campaign. Things come out of the blue, completely out of the blue. And, you have to react to them as they come. One quick note, if you're a rock and roll fan, then you probably know that we celebrate today another birthday of the late Buddy Holly, who was 22 years old when he was killed in 1959, one of the great rockers of all time, born here in Texas, born in Lubbock, Texas. And his grave is right there in Lubbock. If you ever go to Lubbock and you ask the taxi driver or whoever to wherever you're going, every taxi driver knows what the Buddy Holly grave is because there's so many people who go to Lubbock and stop by his grave. So Buddy Holly, who was born in 1937 in Lubbock, Texas, and was killed in that terrible plane crash in early 1959, the crash that inspired that song American Pie and that line, "The Day the Music Died." Buddy Holly would have been 80 whatever today, but he was born on this day in 1937 in Lubbock, Texas. One of my favorites, one of my favorite rockers, even though, previous generation, but I love his music nevertheless. Just a great rocker. Thank you for listening. Everybody have a great weekend. I think we're going to talk a little bit about Texas in the next video, but it won't be until Sunday night. Enjoy this absolutely beautiful weather here in North Texas today. Bye-bye, everybody.